Tactical creativity is the ability to generate useful, adaptive options under pressure. In modern combat, leaders rarely get clean problems with obvious answers. They face incomplete information, shifting conditions, and an opponent who is also learning. This lesson is about strengthening the cognitive habits that help leaders move beyond fixed protocols and create a practical advantage when the situation no longer matches the plan. Analytical planning is powerful when the environment is stable and the rules are clear. But in chaotic domains, logic alone can become brittle. A plan that assumes complete data and fixed rules can fracture when uncertainty, speed, and enemy adaptation enter the fight. Tactical creativity gives leaders another pathway. When the original plan breaks, they can reframe the problem, generate options, and adapt toward opportunity, instead of freezing around the failure of the first answer. Analytical thinking and narrative thinking are not opposites. They solve different parts of the same problem. Analytical thinking helps us compare evidence, reduce error, and identify the most efficient course of action when conditions are knowable. Narrative thinking helps us operate when conditions are sparse, ambiguous, and evolving. It allows leaders to imagine how events may unfold, recognize patterns, and test alternative explanations. Tactical creativity depends on knowing when to shift between these modes. The cognitive weapon system links creative thinking, critical evaluation, and innovation. Creative thinking generates new possibilities. Critical thinking evaluates those possibilities against the mission, constraints, risk, and evidence. Innovation happens when a useful idea is translated into action and adopted in practice. The key point is that creativity by itself is not enough. Tactical creativity becomes operationally meaningful only when ideas are refined, tested, and applied. The brain does not create ideas through a single mental process. Ideation depends on the interaction between the default mode network and the central executive network. The default mode network supports divergent thought, remote associations, and spontaneous idea generation. The central executive network supports focus, working memory, and disciplined evaluation. Leaders need both. Too much free association can become noise, while too much control can shut down novelty before it has a chance to become useful. Creativity is often blocked by habits that feel efficient in the moment. Cognitive fluency pushes us toward the easy answer. Premature convergence causes us to select an option too early. Status quo bias makes familiar approaches feel safer than they really are. Fear of failure narrows the range of acceptable ideas. These barriers are not personal defects. They are predictable cognitive and organizational pressures. Leaders who can name them are better positioned to interrupt them. Doctrine is essential, but it becomes dangerous when it is treated as a substitute for judgment. The fixed doctrine trap occurs when leaders perceive all valid solutions as already existing inside a known set of procedures. That perception can make novel options seem illegitimate even when the situation has changed. The point is not to reject doctrine. The point is to use doctrine as a foundation, then adapt intelligently when the environment demands something more. An innovative mindset is built through repeatable habits. Epistemic curiosity pushes leaders to ask what they do not yet understand. Tolerance for ambiguity helps them remain functional without complete certainty. Remote association helps them connect ideas across domains. Cognitive flexibility helps them shift frames when the first interpretation does not fit. These habits create a loop: observe, question, connect, test, and revise. Individual creativity matters, but organizations determine whether ideas survive. An innovation ecosystem gives people room to experiment at low risk, share uncertainty honestly, and test ideas before scaling them. Psychological safety does not mean lowering standards. It means people can raise concerns, offer unconventional options, and learn from failure without fear of punishment for responsible experimentation. Instructors should emphasize that innovation culture is built through leader behavior, not slogans. This double diamond model separates idea generation from idea evaluation. In the divergent phase, the goal is to expand the set of options, defer judgment, prioritize quantity, challenge assumptions, and combine or modify ideas. In the convergent phase, the goal is to refine, be systematic, develop evaluative measures, assess risk, and determine which ideas are feasible. The critical transition point is knowing when to stop expanding and start selecting. Creativity does not sit outside the military decision-making process. It lives inside it. Divergent thinking is especially important during problem framing, course of action development, and comparison of possible solutions. Convergent thinking becomes essential when leaders evaluate risk, select an option, and synchronize action. The caution is that convergence kills innovation when it happens too early. Leaders should deliberately create space for expansion before narrowing the solution set. Narrative prompts and metaphors help leaders escape literal doctrinal frames when a problem is stuck. Instead of asking only, "What does the checklist say?" leaders can ask, "What does this situation resemble?" A conflict might be viewed as a wildfire where containment and resource starvation matter, or as a soccer game where space, tempo, and positioning matter. These metaphors are not final answers. They are tools for producing fresh insight before returning to disciplined analysis. The term adjacent possible refers to options that become visible when known information, current doctrine, and nearby constraints are recombined. Leaders do not need unlimited imagination to innovate. They need to notice what is just beyond the current standard approach. That requires recording inputs widely, retrieving information across domains, and recombining facts in ways that bypass routine mental pathways. Many useful innovations are not leaps into the unknown. They are disciplined recombinations of what is already nearby. Modern leadership requires a toolkit, not a single thinking style. Creative thinking expands the option set. Critical thinking evaluates and disciplines the options. Systems thinking shows how actions interact across the environment. Data literacy helps leaders interpret evidence without being overwhelmed by it. Artificial intelligence can support pattern recognition and recombination, but judgment remains human. The leader's task is to move among these tools as the situation changes. The leader's mandate is to combine structured methodology with an ecosystem culture that supports trust, safety, and disciplined experimentation. Processes and tools give innovation shape. Culture gives innovation oxygen. When those two elements work together, creative and narrative thinking become more than classroom concepts. They become cognitive weapons that help leaders recognize opportunity, adapt faster than the enemy, and solve problems when logic alone is no longer enough. Creativity in this lesson is not improvisation for its own sake. It is a disciplined way to create usable options when the environment is uncertain, the original plan no longer fits, and the leader still has to act. The key is balance. Analytical thinking helps leaders test ideas, while narrative thinking helps them imagine how events may unfold. Leaders should deliberately delay convergence long enough to generate multiple possibilities, then use doctrine, risk, evidence, and mission requirements to refine the options. Finally, creativity becomes operational only when leaders build the conditions for it: trust, psychological safety, disciplined experimentation, and practical ways to test ideas before scaling them. The bottom line is that tactical creativity is a leadership practice. It combines method, culture, and adaptation so leaders can solve problems faster and more intelligently in complex environments. Thank you for your time and attention.